Growing up is scary, terrifying, actually. It's the first real time in your life, if you've grown up fairly privileged and comfortable, that you're sort of thrown off the deep end and asked to swim on your own. It's something you're told is coming from the word go, but you're not quite ready for it when it finally does come. And it does arrive, and it's completely unavoidable. In fact, the only way you may avoid the brunt of it is if you grow up very privileged and comfortable. I'm 20 years old, soon to be 21 later this year. I'm not so sure that I'm any good at growing up. Yet, anyway. I'm hoping I get better at it. Because as much as I wanted, more than anything, to grow up when I was a child, I was honestly a little scared facing down true adulthood, or at least the prospect of it when it came knocking. It caught me off guard. When, after 4 or 5 years of struggling blindly through my teenage years, I finally started to get the hang of things, I took a look around and I found out time was up. Late last year, I left home for another city. It was time to leave the nest, and I was now a big boy. And big boys went to university for theatre, film, and television. I was excited, sure. In fact, that's pretty much all that I would have liked to be. But I was scared. Of course I was. I had a life at home. Friends, family, a house, history. All the comforts and conveniences I could want. There was every reason to stay, to pick an in-city university, continue living at home, subsequently spend 4 very comfortable, financially unrestricted years coasting by, studying visual communication design at the local posh art school. Of course, I didn't pick that option, despite the fact that I was being advised to do just that. I picked the other option. I picked a university in another city, moved out of my home, and now I will subsequently be spending 4 middlingly comfortable, financially restricted years busting my ass studying filmmaking at a far-off liberal arts school. So in light of that, there are 2 very simple questions that then arise, right? Which is, why, if everything about staying home would have been easier, would I choose to leave? And then, having made that decision, why do I then have to act like such a little bitch about it? Well, the first question, why would I choose to leave? That was tough to answer, even for myself. I guess the point of leaving home was never to be comfortable. Of course it wasn't. I always knew that it would suck at least a little bit. But I still did it because I suppose I didn't think there was another way to get ahead. I'm a pretty spoiled, privileged, sheltered person. Ask anyone who knows me. I haven't seen a lot of what's out there. I tend to be kind of naive. I haven't done a whole lot of backbreaking work. There are no calluses on my hands. And don't get me wrong, that's a pretty sweet life. Not having to worry about most things it's great. But I guess I hit a point where that naivete began to show in the mirror every day. It isn't the best look. And anyway, I was gonna have to make my own way in the world eventually, so I left. To learn, in all senses of the word. And as for the second question, I don't know. Let's chalk it up to my poet's temperament. So anyway, that was it for my adolescence, and it was time to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get going. Frankly, I wasn't quite sure if I was up to it, but it had to be done. Then I played SABLE. Okay, so Sable is a video game. It was made by a very small UK-based independent game studio, and it came out in 2021 originally, but I didn't play it until last year, 2024. I played it at exactly the right time. I played Sable for the very first time at the end of July last year, only about a couple months before I had to pack up and haul ass across the country. I was suitably nervous. I was leaning full tilt into the escapism approach. This is when I started playing Alan Wake 2 before realizing that the game just wouldn't run properly on my computer. This is when I finally played GTA 4 for the first time in my life. Great game, by the way, worth the hype. And it's also when I shaved off probably a decade off of my lifespan raging at Cuphead. I had a great time with all of these games. They kept my mind entertained, engaged, and off of what seemed like an impending seismic shift in my life. That was most important. And it was fresh off of one of these games that I was looking for what the next title would be that would occupy me for the next couple of weeks. And I came across Sable. Now, what I saw online seemed to be exactly the kind of thing I was looking for. Big, wide open world with striking, cel-shaded art style, inspired by the beautiful pages of Mobius comics. That was the main draw. But there was so much else. There was a set of various characters to get to know, and what seemed like a story made almost entirely up of side quests. Little stories dotted around the game world for the player to follow, get to the bottom of. The locations were stunning and varied, and the open world was expansive. This was prime escapist fantasy. So I booted up the game, fully intending to have it consume me for the next half month or so. And then Sable is prime escapist fantasy, just not in the way I thought it would be. The game, for all its mysteries, for all its otherworldliness, is a deeply relatable story, as I've now come to realize. This is a game world that's not our own, full of groups of people and animals and insects that are entirely fictional, where damn near everything works differently to the real world. In other words, this is full-on fantasy. Pretty much no information about this world is clearly communicated to you. There's no spoon-feeding you. And yet, the core story here is perhaps one of the most human that I've ever played. Put simply, the game is about a protagonist, a young person named Sable, controlled by you. We meet Sable on the day of her gliding ceremony. The gliding ceremony is a tradition undertaken by the people of this world, where those who are coming of age must undergo this rite of passage of sorts to find their way in the world. When one is going to undertake their gliding, they're given a glider, which is this sick-ass hover bike, and are told to pretty much ride it off into the sunset. Now you might be thinking, but that seems pretty vague. What are you supposed to do on your gliding? And that's the interesting part. What you do once you ride off into the sunset is your prerogative entirely. The gliding is a completely free-form, open, structureless rite. It is a tradition that every person in this world has to go through, yet there's no prescribed guideline as to what to do. The best you'll get is people who have already undergone their gliding, the adults and the elders of this world, will tell you about their experiences on their gliding. Whether you let their stories influence you and your journey, that's up to you. There's a big, wide, open world out there, full of different kinds of people, various settlements, all kinds of flora and fauna, and crucially, people of multiple different professions. There's cartographers, scrappers, machinists, entertainers, etc. And this is sort of the main crux of the whole gliding process. At the end of this whole journey, the length and course of which is determined entirely by you, you must end your gliding by choosing one of these paths to go down. You're either a cartographer or a machinist. You choose one of these professions as your calling. We starting to see some parallels forming here. So you start the game as Sable. She makes the rounds at her tribe's settlement, tucked away in a corner of the world. It's her big day. She's about to embark on her gliding. She talks about her worries, expresses her excitement, says her goodbyes, and with a newly acquired ability to glide and her very own glider, she's ready to leave, get out into the world, and Japanese Breakfast is, first and foremost, a band that I know next to nothing about. In fact, before I started working on this video, they were a band that I knew absolutely nothing about, like zero. Except, of course, that their soundtrack for the game Sable, aside from just being really, really good in general, is responsible for one of my personal favorite gaming moments of all time, and what I truly believe is the best moment in the game. Doing some heavy, in-depth research, I came to find that Japanese Breakfast and their music have been no strangers to complicated themes and wading around in murky, emotional waters. Their first album was largely about Michelle Zauner, the band's lead singer and songwriter, processing the death of her mother, and the second was concerned with Zauner's detachment and trauma. Lifted that last line right off of the Wikipedia page. Screw ChatGPT, return to cribbing full sentences from Wikipedia like we used to do in the good old days. So it's no surprise that the soundtrack for this game, made entirely by Japanese Breakfast, is pumped full to bursting with emotion. This music captures so perfectly the feeling that the game wants to go for, that nervousness and anticipation of taking the first big step into the unknown. Soft, delicate, nuanced tracks that can feel as gentle as a breeze rustling through leaves, like a sky full of gleaming stars above a lonely desert. The calm you only find up high, on a cliffside or on a snowy peak. There are passages that are lively, and they bounce and they hop with the call of adventure. Songs that evoke that call to adventure, the unforgettable experience of being on one, and the promise of opportunity. The world is your oyster, and boy does this music sure understand that. In amongst all this music, there's one track that I come back to most often, one of the only two songs on the soundtrack with vocals on it. The song called Glider. And it may just be the centerpiece to the entire experience that Sable has to offer. Also, side note, Michelle Zauner also named the band Japanese Breakfast. She said she thought Americans would find the phrase exotic. So that's where the name comes from, for whatever that's worth. Right, so detour aside, where were we? Sable is just about ready for her gliding, but there's also that nervousness. What will she do? Where should she go? Where to go next? Will she truly find her calling out there in the world? What if she hates it on her own? Or alternatively, what if there's nothing else that she'd rather do ever again than be on her gliding? I was right there with Sable. Not just because, controller in my hand, I was the one piloting her, but because I was her. I was in the same boat. And the boat was pulling up the anchor and heading out to sea sooner than I thought I was ready. What would I do? Was moving away the right call? Have I really found my calling in filmmaking? Was it worth it? What if I hate it out there? Or alternatively, what if I never want to come back? Would I leave all this behind? Had I seen enough independently produced Czechoslovakian art house cinema to truly be a film student? All of these were pertinent questions, to be sure, but these questions had been swirling in my head non-stop. All these other games that I'd been playing had been doing a half-decent job of keeping my mind preoccupied, but this game, it had only brought all these thoughts to the forefront. Now, these questions were top of mind. They were, in essence, the same questions, fears, and hopes that were swirling around in Sable's head. The pressure was mounting, and the moment was creeping ever closer, as it slowly got closer and closer to the time that I finally departed from my gliding. The rush of the moment overpowered everything else until there was only one thing left to do. Go.
Come in to me, show us the way. I'm caught between the wind and parts of the unknown. Adored between two worlds, a sight to see. It feels like everything is moving.
The feeling is unmatched. There is nothing like it. Stepping on the gas and watching that hoverbike peel out of your camp and towards the great expanse almost gives you the same lurch in your stomach that you feel descending from the apex of a roller coaster's arc. By this point in the game, you are Sable. This is your gliding. The open sands are yours to explore, and you feel the weight of that, yes, but also the pure, unadulterated freedom. Glider, the song from the soundtrack, its centerpiece, is blaring in your ears. You've taken off, and now that you have, there's no turning back, no reconsideration. And you knew that all along. That's probably where a good chunk of that fear came from. But now, wind in your hair, dust blowing past, it does not matter. You're going forward. The destination, whatever or wherever it may be, lies ahead. You understand that now. All you ever had to do was take that first step. Now this song, Glider, is a masterpiece. There is very rarely such a perfectly orchestrated moment in a medium that's as free-form as video games. Almost no other game, save from a couple other examples, manages to pull together the gameplay experience and the soundscape quite this effectively. It's also perfectly placed to place perhaps the most lively, euphoric, cathartic song on the whole OST, right at where is the most pivotal early game point in the story, is such a simple yet elegantly effective decision. Nearly all of the time that I spent in this game following this moment was colored by the experience of, experiencing this sequence. This rush of emotion hits you just as hard as the song wants it to, because it comes after an opening that is almost entirely building up to this. About an hour, depending on how much time you decide to take soaking up the atmosphere before leaving on your gliding. All of it is spent in anticipation of this moment. And what a song! The synths forming its backbone, the soft white noise ever present in the back of the mix, the slow and ponderous build-up, the chopped up vocals, all layering and layering and layering, building anticipation until Michel Zauner's voice positively soars over the rest of the mix. It's breezy and light, yet it never wavers. She belts out the powerhouse chorus with a voice that's like it's stable and it's rock solid. Her voice becomes the final piece of the puzzle that makes the song truly transcendental. And then the song fades away. And then it's just you, or Sable, and your hoverbike in the great big world. It's been about 9 months since I first left home for uni. I've spent 2 semesters away from home and I've been back for short bursts here and there in the middle, but I'm back again. I'm back home, this time for about 3 months. It's summer break. Things feel different now. I feel different, at least I think I do. I know I look a little different, ever so slightly. I had a rough time for a bit, sometimes still do. My time fleeing the coop wasn't as smooth sailing and fantastical as Sable's is, but it also wasn't at all like my worst fears. I have started to find my way and get the hang of things, if only just a little bit. I'm still a bumbling fool a lot of the time. I still make bad calls and act irresponsibly. Of course I do. I was born an only son. But I am trying to turn the ship around. Sometimes the wind helps and sometimes it hinders, but ultimately, I think I'm making progress. The game, Sable, it didn't end up being the mindless, escapist, lose all your free time for 2 weeks experience that I was expecting and wanting it to be. It isn't really about that. There isn't a completion checklist or a map with a billion side quests recycled infinitely to pad out your playtime. I spent around 10 hours in this game. Slowly, leisurely, an hour or two at a time. I expected it to rob me of 100 odd hours, but the 10 mere hours that I spent in Sable were some of the most memorable that I've spent in any game. It's an experience anyone who plays games, or doesn't already do so, but is open to it, should play through. It's worth it. My playthrough of the game is now important to me, less so because of the specifics of what I did in the game itself, but more so because the slow, quiet, and ponderous space of the game became the place that I needed to sort out my apprehensions and my worries about starting my own gliding of sorts, if you will. It didn't entirely cure my worries or prime me for sure success, but it did give me what I needed. Perspective. And a clearer head. I ended my playthrough of Sable pretty satisfied with my time. I would tell you what profession I ended up picking at the end of my gliding, but honestly, off the top of my head, I can't remember. And I would go and check, but not remembering seems notable somehow. Maybe what I chose at the end wasn't the point at all. Something, the journey is more important than the destination, I guess. Yeah, when will my gliding come to an end? Find out next week, or in about a year's time when I finally choose to upload again. Till next time, bye bye.